karmic impression.
That's how Buddha told us.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, this is one of the examples how Buddha has explained that.
And the only difference is, that's for sure, scientifically it's also proven that memory is going to be there, that karmic impression is there in our mind. But what Hinduism is different from this thing is that Hinduism says that these karmic impressions will remain even after our deaths. That's actually our subtle body, these karmic impressions. When we just leave out discard the physical body, what remains is this collection of the karmic impressions. That's the subtle body.
Right.
Okay? And that will determine, the nature of that karmic impressions will determine our next life.
Right.
Okay? There are a lot of conflicting karmic impressions in our body. They will work it out. Okay? And finally, the strongest of the karmic impressions will come forward and they will decide the nature of our next life.
Right.
Okay? So, and that's what Hinduism says. Okay? And that will determine the environment in which we have to take birth, whatever. Okay? So we have to play out those karmic impressions. So yeah, now let me come to that Purushartham. So when we just take birth with those kind of strong karmic impressions, we have taken birth because of these karmic impressions. So our duty is to play out or burn out these karmic impressions.
Oh, vasanas, is that?
What's it?
Vasana?
Vasana.
Vasanas.
Yeah, vasana.
Proclivity.
Yes.
Vasanas.
Okay.
So we have a
Yeah.
duty to actually
Yeah,
live
1
it.
minute, 1 minute. Let me complete it. Okay. So finding out those karmic impressions is actually our dharma. So that is our dharma. Dharma means that we have to play a role in this life, and that role is determined by these karmic impressions. So if we know what all things we have to play out in this life, it's quite easy, right? So that's actually finding out the dharma. That's the first Purushartha, dharma. Second Purushartha, artha. Artha means all these karmic impressions are related to two things. First one, wealth, artha. Wealth doesn't mean money alone, all those things, yeah, possessions, whatever. But second, our emotional nature, kama. Okay? So these are the two areas we have to work in this life. So second Purushartha, artha, is meant to play out our karmic impressions related to artha. So second ashrama is garhastya. Garhastya ashrama is meant to play out or burn out the impressions related to artha.
Is it Grahasya or Gruhasya? What is that? It's like Gruhasya. It's
Yeah, both
it's
are okay.
Gruhasya.
Yeah,
Okay.
grihams,
Yeah.
both are okay. So, and third one is vanaprastham. Vanaprastham means, in the vanaprastham period, what you're supposed to do is, you have to keep away from all the attachments. By the time when you reach that age, you might have lots of, children, grandchildren, and definitely you are going to be attached to them. So that's the period where you have to keep away from this relationship. To put it in another words, you have to burn out, play out your karmic impressions related to emotions. And finally, sannyasa. That means just moving completely away from this life.
Renunciation.
Yeah, renunciation. So definitely by sannyasam you may not be able to completely burn out the impressions, because now what you have done is that you have played out the strongest of the impressions. There are thousands of the other impressions, right? And when you died just before, and all the karmic impressions walked out, and the strongest only came up, and that determined your present life. So that the strongest impressions are only played out in this life. When you die, again, all these karmic impressions will work out, and the strongest will come. So after maybe several births, we can play out all those impressions.
So the vasana, you said it's spanning lives?
Yeah.
Birth and, okay, it spans, right?
Yeah.
It's coming from the,
Yeah.
that's why it is called vasana.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You bring from your past.
Yes.
So does that therefore make sense when you talk about this, the karmic impressions, the importance of striking a harmony, right?
Yeah.
Minimize
Yeah.
conflict. Would it then help if every society implemented caste system? Because our roles and statuses are determined at the time of birth.
I don't think that.
Because it puts you in a station right from day one.
Okay.
And so there are really there's no difficulty in making a decision because your role is already predetermined. Because you are placed in a station, you are a Kshatriya, you are a soldier.
Then how do you explain the prodigies? You find.
Yeah, because these are individualistic.
Yeah.
You cannot make it in a group.
If imagine if Einstein was born in a tribal society, definitely. If there is strict and rigid caste system, definitely, So I don't. Caste system is good to a certain extent if it's moderate, but when you make it really kind of exploitory in nature, then it won't work, I think.
That is also like a sociological, just.
No, I was just simply going along with that assertion
Definitely.
that, if the less disharmony we have in karmic impressions, the less miserable, the more balanced we will be. So
the philosophy behind this caste system was this, actually.
I think what you have in mind is varna, not jati.
Yeah, varna.
Two different things.
Varna, caste.
Varna and jati system are two different things.
The caste in which you were born, as soon as you're born, that indicates what your karmic impressions have been till that birth. Right?
That's one explanation you could say. If you you can apply
And
it
it's up to
here.
you to decide
Therefore,
what you
it
have to
is
do in
it's
that.
determined. So the dharma that there is no debate within. It is already picked for you. So you simply follow the path. So therefore, it may not cause any contradiction, right?
The thing is that, even if you take birth in a particular varna or something like that, how can you make sure that that's your dharma? Everybody, even in Mahabharata period, people face this conflict. Bhishma tried to find out the dharma. Actually, Drona, he's a Brahmin by birth. So if you follow that dharma of his, what you call varna, he wouldn't have fought in the battle. So finding
It's just an indication of where you stand till that birth, and then it's up to you to decide what you have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back on the basic point which you said, and I wanted to be clear. When you said the example where you take north or south for the animal, so normally we know that any whatever karmas we have, that will be burned out. For example, if it is my fate, if I say, it is based on what I have did in the past, it's karmas. That's how we are burning out all those karmas. But here, when you said that based on the will, when he takes the decision, the animal whoever, he takes the decision, that is creating a karmic effect.
Exactly.
Right? Now, is it not contrasting, because here you are creating the karmic. The other example which I am trying to talk normally is how the karmic effect is actually burning out, and that is how I am taking decision.
Okay.
You see
Let me put it differently. You took a decision, and definitely that decision was influenced by the karmic impressions.
Right.
That's sure, right?
Yeah.
That's why you decided to go north.
Yes.
And other person would have selected south, actually.
Yes.
So that decision creates another karmic impression.
Okay.
Definitely.
Oh, it's a cycle. So
Yeah, it's a cycle.
So
that's
what
why,
you mean,
if you have 10 karmic impressions to play out this life, normally what we do is an average human being, and instead of playing out these 10 karmic impressions, we accumulate 20 more. So when we die, it's going to be 10 more.
So the conscious self then is always driven by or influenced by the karmic impressions from previous. And it propels you to move in a certain direction.
Conscience, you mean?
But the conscious self, when
Self,
you are,
okay.
the decision maker.
Decision maker, definitely. We don't know the nature of the self actually. Self doesn't
So it's
have
driven or influenced by the karmic
Each and
vibration.
every of a decision. If you take a decision, it's influenced by past.
And then that is your destiny then. Then that
it
picks
becomes
up.
the destiny.
So because you're not sure what you have done in the past life. And
Just it's driven by vasanas.
And if you, I think, Now, reincarnation, I don't think that it's only the superstition of Hinduism. And now, lots of researches have been conducted in USA, I think. Ian Stevenson, I think he's in some other, some universities in USA, I don't know where he works actually. If you Google, you'll get it. And he has done a tremendous research. Yeah. And what he did was that, sometimes you get reports of children talking about, yeah, I don't belong to this place, my place is different, something like that. Some people talk like that. And he collected the details of these kind of children, and he did some research. So he took around 2,000 cases, but he couldn't just do all the researches, go after all these 2,000 cases, because what happens is that normally the child says these kind of things only up to 4 or 5. After 5, when he becomes 6 or 7, he forgets everything. Only in the childhood, maybe when he's 2, when he's 3, when he starts to speak, he says, no, this is not my father, something like that. Maybe after 1 or 2 years, he forgets everything. Okay? So what happens is that, when these reports reaches Ian Stevenson, maybe the child may be 6 or 7. So by the time he reaches the house of this child, definitely, he may have forgotten. That's why, and he could find only genuine cases 20 or 30. And in these 20 or 30 cases, he could find out the real person. And one I think, lady is from India, I think. One case is from India. And that girl told, this house doesn't belong to me, and my house is near a village, and it's near a mountain or valley, something like that. Then Ian Stevenson inquired about such a place to this child's relatives. Then relatives, it was very difficult, but finally he could identify, yeah, there is a village near, another village near this village, which is somewhat similar to this. Then he went to that village and he inquired. And he also told, this child also told something, my father does some work or something like that. So he inquired whether such a person lived recently. He could find out that, yeah, such a person lived. And 20 cases he could identify that,
Is it the same geographical location or somewhere else?
A bit far, maybe. Not that much far. If it's that much far, he couldn't identify that place. Okay. So it's from the relatives that he could identify that place. So, but the thing is that his research becomes scientific because he doesn't say that these 30 cases prove reincarnation. How can we say that? The only thing he said is that, lot of things this child taught, and I could identify the matching person.
5-6 months back, actually, there was a case which I read. One boy talked about his name, and he was a soldier in the Second World War. And it was actually, I don't know who did that, but when it traced back, he was the person who was living in that place. I think it's somewhere in Europe, somebody, the boy talked, and somewhere in US, actually, it was traced back to that soldier. Yeah, so, and it was,
cases.
yeah, it was verified. And the other thing was that extension of earlier discussion, that when you say two opposing forces, but it is possible that when you are in samsara, but still you are in what do you call unity. I mean, you are actually finding the enlightenment through your whatever you are doing in this karma. So, that's a possibility you are saying, right? I mean, I am in samsara, but at the same time, in spite of some people may have the opposing forces, but for me, being in samsara, I can unify those things to go to the enlightenment.
Not enlightenment actually. If you can unify all those things, that stage is the enlightenment actually. There is no place, yeah, this is a place for enlightenment actually, or this contradictory karmic impressions create this samsara.
Yeah.
Once these contradictory impressions are removed,
Oh, you
you
need
are
to
no
remove
longer
that. That's
going
what
to
my
be in
point.
samsara.
Okay.
But take Krishna for example. Okay, Krishna, and he lived in this world, but he didn't belong to the samsara. He was beyond samsara.
Okay.
And that's why Krishna is called a perfect incarnation. And he could fight, he could sing, he could dance, he could play flutes, he could meditate. So normally a person, cannot do all those things. Because all these things he was detached from all those things.
But being involved, that my point is actually by being involved in samsara means, like, for example, you gave example of Einstein. Einstein has also got family and all that, right? He married to somebody.
Yeah.
So
That's
even
one-
having that, but getting enlightened. And I'm not saying that's a place or anything, but actually going for like Buddha, for example.
Yeah.
So who got enlightened? So which means that he ceases to be a incarnation again. Coming back to this life. Right? So if that is the
Might be, yeah.
explanation, if that is the explanation, because we have to have some reference so that we understand it actually. So if that is the case, that means that in spite of having, so our problem is, so my point is, like, in spite of having opposing forces, but if our karma is such that, but still we can find the way in this life.
Yeah.
After coming so many lives, I don't mean that this life we find it, but yeah.
And that harmonization should be the aim actually.
Aim, yeah.
Yeah. And the problem is that, in our life we have to play different roles. And these different roles creates contradictory impressions. You have to play the role of a child. Later you have to play the role of a father. And these two roles create contradictory impressions. You have to play the role of a student, which will create some kind of particular impressions. Then later you have to play the role of a teacher, which is going to be contradictory. So in this life, situations are like that, where we have to play out different contradictory roles and which will create contradictory impressions. So what we can do is, even when we just play out these kind of different roles, there should be a center from all these things come. Okay, we need to have a center. Okay? Don't lost in this kind of thing. Once you are lost, definitely it will keep on creating many other karmic impressions. If you have a center, whether you fight, whether you meditate, you are going to have the same mental attitude. That's actually what detachment means. And always keeping at the center. You should have a center.
Going back to the Tantra question, actually, as I was mentioning about my friend's experience. So he was also saying, like, being in US, what he suggested me is, like, you can be in US, but the tantric person or guru who has got this power of opening up, so he can sit, and at a particular time, for example, they do, as per him, he says, he does it after 1 o'clock or so. So that means I have to sit here at around 1 o'clock, that time, which means that midnight, 1 o'clock. If I sit here, I don't know what to do, but they will explain. Quiet sitting with closed eyes, I don't know. So he passed on the energy to me, and sort of cleansing any problems you have. So that's a possibility you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. If you can work upon your chronic body, definitely this geographical distance doesn't matter.
Okay, like you said, one of the questions.
In the same way, if you have the capacity to work on your metal layer, definitely you can read even the thoughts actually.
So that's a possibility. Okay, that's okay.
And for a completely realized person, I don't think that even time matters actually. For a person like Ramana Maharshi, he can do anything. I have read somewhere, one remark. Normally yogis are for normal human beings. Okay, yogis come here for normal human beings. But people like Ramana Maharshi, they have come for the masters actually. And he was actually master's master. And lots of people got illumination just by simply sitting by the side of him. And I will tell one incident. And in Kerala, there was a yogi called Nitya Chaitanya Yogi. he was very popular and he was very knowledgeable, and even the communists accepted him. So it was that. So in his biography, you will come across one incident. First, he was the disciple of Narayanan Guru, who was the disciple of Sri Narayanan Guru. Sri Narayanan Guru was a really celebrated master who lived in the early part of 20th century. And this Narayanan Guru was his disciple, and Yeti was his disciple. Then Yeti did a lot of practices, and he took sannyas very early age, at 17 or 18. Then he lived with Nataraja Guru maybe a couple of years, and he did the sadhana. Then it was Nataraja Guru who asked the Yeti to take philosophy PG. So when Yeti was reluctant, he told, no, I don't want to just pursue this kind of thing. No, you have a role to play. Go and take that degree, he told, master told. Then Yeti went to a college and he took the postgraduate degree. Then by that time, Nataraja Guru passed away. So Yeti didn't know what to do. Then he started to travel all around India. Then he met several masters, he lived in several monasteries, and he lived with Gandhiji also. Okay. Then he happened to visit Ramanashram also, by the way. Then, of course, he lived in Himalaya also, and he did lots of practice there, some under different masters. Then finally he reached Ramanashram. Then he entered the ashram. So when he entered there, he was only familiar with discussion. That means, in all the other monasteries, the disciple used to ask questions to the teacher. Teacher would clear his doubts, a kind of intellectual pursuit or whatever, somewhat like that. So when he reached there, he sat near Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi didn't used to speak actually. He simply just, people used to come in thousands. They would sit by the side of him. After that, they would leave. That's the way. So Yeti thought, why is he sitting? And then he started to compare Ramana Maharshi with Gandhiji. Look at Gandhiji, how wonderfully, he does service to the humanity. This man simply sitting, without doing anything, even without talking anything. So he's simply wasting his life. That's the way he thought, Then he decided to leave the place that day, evening. But when the evening came and when it was time to leave, he felt a kind of pulling. He thought, no, I can go tomorrow. He postponed it to the next day. Then he stayed in the ashram. Next day also did the same thing. So he sat there. People used to come. They used to sing bhajans and they would leave. So he watched all those things. And 2 or 3 days this was repeated. When the 3rd day came, he felt a kind of attraction towards Ramana Maharshi. Then 3rd day, finally he decided to leave. Then at the noon break, he went outside. Then he bought some fruits. He thought, anyway, I was here for 3 days, so it would be proper to just, give these fruits to Ramana Maharshi. So he brought some fruits and he sat there. That day also he couldn't leave. He postponed it to the next day. The 4th day, I think, or 5th day, after lunch, he was just, he decided to leave just after lunch. Then before lunch, he was looking at Ramana Maharshi. So the interesting thing was that, all these 4 days, Ramana Maharshi very rarely looked at Nitya Chaitanya. And he was, most of the time, Ramana Maharshi used to look at the just blank, a blank look was there almost all the time in his face. So, but just before the noon break, Ramana Maharshi just gazed all those crowd, and when his gaze reached Yeti, it stayed there for some time and looked at Yeti's eyes for some time. Then Yeti said in his autobiography, when his gaze met my gaze, I completely lost my consciousness. I don't know what happened. Then I might have, stayed there for some time. When I opened my eyes, nobody was there. The hall was vacant. I was the only person sitting there. Tears were coming down the cheeks. So it took some time for him to regain his consciousness. Then when he regained his consciousness, one person came, servant of that, not servant, that inhabitant of that, Andevasi, what you call, of that ashram came, and that person told Yadi, Master is calling you. Then Yadi went. Then it was time for the lunch, and all the people were sitting. Ramana Maharshi was also, Ramana Maharshi used to take lunch with all the other people. He never used to take lunch separately. And so he was also sitting, and just the right side of Ramana Maharshi, one plate was, okay, all the things, things were put in there, and nobody was sitting there. And when Yadi entered the hall, Ramana Maharshi simply told, just showed the action, just come here. He didn't say come here, he showed like that. Yadi went there, and Ramana Maharshi pointed that plate. Yadi sat there, and he ate the lunch. Now, Ramana Maharshi didn't say anything, Yadi didn't ask anything. Then Yadi says that he couldn't take the lunch because tears were still coming down. He couldn't control himself. Such was the ecstasy. Okay? Then after that, when Ramana Maharshi finished his lunch, he looked at Yadi, maybe a couple of minutes, at his plate, and he left without saying anything. Then Yadi told that, he writes again. Then after that, I didn't feel that it is necessary to go and sit there again because I got what I wanted. So from that moment onwards, Ramana Maharshi is not a person to me. And I cannot say what he is to me. He is not definitely a person. That's just his description. So in the same way, lots of saints have given similar description about Ramana Maharshi. So actually his presence itself is actually a kind of magnet. So that's what a yogi can do.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.